Mr. Manser, will you start us off with the pledge, please?
You're welcome.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In the absence of Mr. Bennett because of his mother's illness, Mr. Thomas will chair the meeting this evening, gentlemen.
So let's make a motion.
Yeah, that's got to be a motion and a vote.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Mr.
I just feel it appropriate, Scott being our leader and our close friend, that if we could take a moment of silence to give a prayer for his, in your own way, for his mother. Amen. I'd like to ask the approval of the consent agenda.
I would so move both, Mr. Chairman, the consent agenda and the agenda. And on the agenda portion, add the need to cancel or reschedule the May 7th Committee of the Whole meeting because that's election day. And this room is already, will be a precinct for that date. So you may either cancel or reschedule the May 7th meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
So are we going to cancel or are we going to reschedule?
Attorney Laddie?
Well, I think you have that as an agenda item, is that correct? The amended got, so item F,
Oh, has that been added? Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I'd like to start our citizen comment, if we can start on the left side of the room. To the left, I'm sorry, it would be my left. Mr. Bush.
Yes, Jim Bush, 5243 Lethbridge Road. I just have a question. On your agenda, at the very end, you have item C, the board will consider a motion to authorize the superintendent for an RFP in the baseball fields. I'm curious why this is being done differently. In the past, it's always Park and Rec did this. Why now is the township doing this? When did you make the change? Is my question. Was there a discussion? I know you've talked about it several times, but I don't ever remember the board making a formal policy change. I'm just curious about that.
We made a formal policy change when we went through the mapping exercise with Director Edson and Trustee Atkins, and we had a vote and we formalized it with the new mapping.
The board made the change?
The board made the change.
Okay. I did not remember that change.
Yeah, I think that was, what, 2 months ago?
That.
Pardon?
Much more than that.
3 months, 4.
Last year.
it was last year.
That was my question.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was a really good mapping with Trustee Guzak, myself, and Director Edson and Trustee Atkins. And they put on a mapping exercise, and we remapped the way that we would start a project compared to what we did before, where it would be a start to finish board decision with the commission being more involved, overlooking. Is there any more public comment on the left side of the room? On the right side of the room? Yes, sir.
My name is Bob Budzinski, and I represent Pine Hollow Estates, Woods of Pine Hollow. And I'm the president, and there's 2 phases in our section, and both phases have agreed to allow me to speak. We'd like to have our roads paved. I'm sure you've heard that discussion before. We're a private road, so we've encountered some opposition. 70% of our frontage has been submitted to the homeowners in a petition in favor of the road paving. We submitted the petitions to Kathy Lane, who in turn has submitted them to the board. Because we're a private road, we feel we're kind of being discriminated against. We pay our taxes, which I might say is more than most homeowners pay for where we live. And under the Public Improvement Act 188, there is under section 41722 a provision that says the construction, improvement, and maintenance of private roads are equal to the construction, improvement, and maintenance of public roads. The wording is exactly the same, and I have a copy in case anybody would like to see it. We have no opposition in our area from any homeowners that says, no, we don't want to have the roads improved, obviously. So what we want to know is, why can't we have a formal hearing on this matter so we can proceed to have a bond obtained? The bond will not exceed $325,000. We've had 6 bids already. Not everyone will participate in the bond, as some of the people will actually pay their portion, which will reduce the bond better. Better roads should mean higher home value and likewise more taxes to the township. It's a win-win for everybody, and we don't know why we're being pushed back and why we can't seem to get a bond. Do we have an answer for that?
I'd like to direct that to,
Mr.
probably
Limita.
Mr. Limita.
Sure, I can answer that question. The board policy right now, as a matter of policy, does not do financing for private roads. We don't, board policy has long been that for private road owners, it's their responsibility, or private property owners, it's their responsibility to maintain those roads. What it would require is a change of policy or philosophy on the board's perspective that would then allow the township to put their full faith and credit behind allowing private property owners to have improvements done to their property, have the township finance it.
Don't you think the property owners in Pine Hollow are as responsible as the property owners in some other lesser area? Don't you think we should be able to allow ourselves?
It doesn't really matter what I think. It's your elected officials'
Well, you said the philosophy. You said the philosophy.
Correct. It is their philosophy. I don't get a vote. I'm an appointed individual who work for them. The board's philosophy has long been that they will work with public roads to get those improvement if 51% of the property owners petition the board and ask them to finance it.
We had 70% of the frontage and 70% of the people in Pine Hollow submit a petition that we have put in Kathy Lane's hands. We just feel like we're being discriminated against. We want to have the public. If you'd see our roads, you'd say, what the heck is wrong with those roads? They're just absolutely awful. I mean, we've tried to pothole them. It's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous, the kind of roads we have where we live.
What I'd like to do, sir, is you as the president and the spokesperson, why don't you and I, after the meeting tonight, or at your convenience, I'll give you my contact information.
It'll be tonight. I'll wait
We
for
can
you.
connect, and then I'll introduce you to our supervisor, Mr. Bennett, and the 3 of us can sit down. We do have a subcommittee right now that is looking at the road situation in the township. Again, townships, by law, by state law, we don't own our roads, they're owned by the county. But who are the folks on our roads?
Supervisor Bennett, Clerk
Myself
Lane,
and Mr. Massey.
and Trustee Massey.
Okay, well, I will get you in contact with the supervisor and the task force that's operating on that, okay?
Okay, thank you so much for your
You're
time.
welcome.
Anybody else?
I really don't have a whole lot to add, but I'm a former president of Phase 1.
We need to have your name in the.
Oh, I'm sorry, James Culver. And I'm a former board president of Phase 1, and that was probably about 5 years ago. I served for 2 years. I'm still a homeowner there. I was one that voted in favor of road improvements. We really needed road improvements for a number of years. Even when I was president, we tried to get that through. And so I mainly just want to back up what Mr. Budzinski had to say.
I've been on your roads, they are
Yeah,
atrocious.
they are really bad, full of potholes. We've done a lot of repairs, but it's really time to resurface them.
I really think that we can work something out, especially, you know, it's something that our vision has been set for last year when they did form this road task force, and we take the task force not lightly. I know that the 3 of them have been working diligently on this, and I'm sure that we can figure something out that's suitable for both the township and the other residents.
Yeah, and I would like to second too, that I think it is gonna increase property values and therefore tax base.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sean Rimmel, also part of the homeowners. I'm the treasurer for the other phase.
Can we get your address, sir?
6145 Saddle Creek Court.
Thank you.
With Mr. Lamenta, I'm not sure I got your last name, what you raised. Could you just clarify why is it that paying our taxes is not a credit risk or not a risk that we don't pay because you guys can foreclose, where a bond seems to be a risk? Could you clarify my misunderstanding? Is there a reason why a bond is a risk versus us being foreclosed on our properties if we don't pay it?
I believe that that would be best answered by our attorney.
Well, if Mr. Lehman has a response, I'll certainly follow him. But one of the things that's occurring to me, and that has occurred to me in the past, is that typically homeowners or people that own property in a condominium association have a mechanism in place to cause improvements to be made throughout their development. They may not have the money, they may not have $326,000, but they have the ability to assess their property and to have improvements carried out in their developments. The other thing is, we, unlike the road commission, we don't have a road DPW. We don't have engineers. We're not skilled or experienced at building roads or overseeing the building of roads, and that's been one of the problems that we've had in the past.
Does that answer your question?
Not really. I mean, it's still confusing for me where we're a risk for paying back a bond. It doesn't make sense to me in that statement.
Superintendent.
Well, maybe I didn't understand your question. What are you asking me? Why are you will be at risk if there's improvement done to your property, whether it be done by your association or whether it be done by the township, there'll be a lien on your property for that value.
Correct. So why is it, with the superintendent's response earlier to Mr. Badinsky, it indicated that there was, the word I heard was risk of payment. Did I misunderstand that?
I didn't hear
I didn't
that.
get that either.
So there wouldn't be a risk for the township if there was a bond that we wouldn't be able to pay it because of the fact that
The township's protected because we have the ability to place a lien on your property. So whether we're doing this for a private road or if we do it for a public road, we still have the same ability to, once the special assessment district is created, we have the ability to place a lien on your property for payment. So there is it's no inherent, like a bigger risk. All I said was from a board's philosophical decision, their policy is that they don't put the full faith and credit for private property owners on a private parcel or a private road for that repair. If you want to have them change that, then what you need to do is get the board to agree that they're willing to do that. Now, some taxpayers will take offense at it as bad public policy because you're private property owners and the board is essentially financing private individuals' property, and so it becomes, what are the parameters? When does it stop? Well, I want something fixed on my property. Can you do mine as well? That's where if you're looking at the pros and cons, but as far as the risk to the township, it's the same. We have the ability to place a lien on your parcel or someone else's parcel that petitioned us from a subdivision for a public road.
Well,
So what I would like to do is, if you're willing to work with your homeowner's president, why don't you sit down with myself and our supervisor Bennett, and we'll take your concerns to the task force, and then we'll get back with you.
I just want to make one last statement. Our taxes, and I think it can be easily clarified, it's about 1.2 million that our subdivision pays in taxes per year. So we're talking about a quarter of that towards a bond, right? So it's not that we're paying chump change. I stayed in the previous subdivision where my taxes were a tenth of what I'm paying now. I'm not getting.
Was that a private road?
That was also a private road. I was paying 10% of the value I'm paying now, and I'm not getting as a homeowner, I'm not getting 10 times more service. There's a whole philosophy, you want to use that term, philosophical way of talking about it, but it seems, as Mr. Badinsky said, that we seem to sit on the wrong end of the discussion.
Well,
And I look forward to having a further conversation.
this is the first time that it's been brought to the board's attention, and since the last 3 years. So again, what I'll do is I will meet with the board president after the meeting, or you can contact me, and you don't have to stay for the whole meeting, just send me an email or give me a call, and I will work with Supervisor Bennett, and then he will work with the task force. Okay?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I have a question since we were discussing
Yes, Trustee Massey.
and asking questions. When were the signatures turned in?
The signatures were turned in about 3 weeks ago and sent to Mr. Bennett and to Mr. Limita with a request to meet with them to discuss how to proceed.
I just want everyone to know this is my first time hearing about it, okay? So I don't want anyone to leave thinking that the board knew about the signatures, which I did not know about. And I don't know whether my other colleagues knew anything about it.
No, it sounds like this is something that happened in the recent last 3 weeks, and we had a holiday in there too, so.
Okay.
Hello,
Hi.
Miss Lane, Mr. Bennett. My name is William Owen. I've lived in Pine Hollow subdivision for 19 years and
Mr.
6
Owen,
months.
could we get your address, please?
Yes, 6153 Gateway, G-A-I-T-W-A-Y Drive. Grand Blanc 48439.
Yes, sir.
The whole thing started a long time ago in front of this council. And Mr. David Laddie had an idea, I believe, to save you some money. This was probably about 10 years ago, and they turned our roads away from being county roads to private roads. And ever since we've taken care of our own snow plowing, our own maintenance, and everything else, and you guys used to plow our road, but you didn't have to anymore, and he looked at that, you guys were looking at money, at saving money, and I believe he's the reason for it, that he had the idea and you all bought into it. That's okay. We don't mind plowing our own roads because we get them plowed better and sooner than leaving it up to the township. But we would like to ask for some help in financing the resurfacing of these, because for 10 years they were county roads and also under your jurisdiction. So that's where it started. That's where the problem started.
Okay. Well,
And I was also, for a number of years, I was the treasurer of the Pine Hollow Condominium Association. And if it wasn't a condominium association, if you look there and drive through there, I don't think it looks like a condominium. Do you?
no, sir.
It's a semantics of why they did it. I'm not sure how that was before I lived there. But because of that, that's what's creating a lot of this, and he found the weasel words to be able to get out of having it be a road under your and the county's jurisdiction.
Okay. One thing that you have to realize, sir, is that townships by state law do not own roads. The reason why the county owns all roads in a township through the state of Michigan. Cities own their own roads.
That's true.
We don't receive any tax.
They are all done by the.
We don't receive any tax dollars. We receive nothing, no tax dollars.
That's right.
And we plow our roads. The township does out of our general fund.
You did it out of the goodness of your heart to help your citizens.
But you have to remember too that this board, there's 4 of us that this is our 3rd year, and this is the first we've heard about this.
Okay.
So what I'll do is I will meet with the president after the meeting, or if he contacts me, I will get him with our supervisor, and then from there we'll work with our task force, because we do take this serious. Because with the roads, I have a huge issue with the roads personally. And I'm on the phone day in and day out with the county. In fact, we're on top of it.
Yes, the county road commission has the funding supposedly to maintain and plow all county roads. But obviously in Genesee County, they don't have enough funds to do it. We all know that.
And another thing with the county is that, again, I'm gonna reiterate, we receive no tax dollars,
Yes.
nothing. And we still pay 50% of the roads through our general fund.
But you plow because the board here decided that would be something to help the citizens of Grand Blanc Township.
Back in 1972.
Not under any guidelines or jurisdiction of the state or the county.
Actually, they worked it out with the county because they had to get a special dispensation for it.
But you guys don't get any funding from it.
Absolutely nothing. But I promise you, I will work with the president.
Okay.
All right, sir, thank you.
Hi there, I'm Jennifer Silverton. I'm at 6279 Cantor Creek Trail. Had a comment and a question. While everyone in our neighborhood might not be comfortable speaking, I was hopeful that maybe everyone could raise their hand just so you could see how much support and concern there is from our neighborhood. So, thank you. My other question is a legal question, because I don't have a legal background. I've heard you've mentioned that it's been the philosophy of the board not to act on our request, but yet I thought Mr. Bazinski cited some legal language that did say that there should be coverage for private roads. So could you address where maybe philosophy begins and ends and the legality does?
Sure, I'll take at least part of it. It's true that the statute that regulates special assessments in not just townships but other units of government does allow for a special assessment for a private road. And it doesn't say should, it just says it's available, just like it is for a public road in a subdivision that does not have a homeowners association as a part of its master deed. The difference in philosophy, I think, starts there. I think when you have, and when I say site condominium, I'm talking, your properties are site condominiums. You own units, the units happen to be yards, they look just like ordinary neighborhoods. But they're controlled by a master deed, and they're also controlled, and you've heard mention of this tonight, they're driven by an association. The association has the ability to make improvements in condominium units. That is not the case in an ordinary subdivision. Ordinary subdivisions have no way of raising money to take care of their common elements where condominiums do. And so that's, I think, the departure between the philosophy, and that is that these are private subdivisions with associations that have the legal means and the ability to raise money and spend money, and an ordinary subdivision does not have the ability. And I think that's probably how the line was drawn years ago. But back to your original point, either way, it's possible for a township to have a special assessment for a road improvement in a private or a site condominium for a private road or a public road.
So am I summarizing it correctly then, that you're saying it is legally possible and it's just something that the board would take up and consider on a case-by-case basis?
It's legally possible. I don't know if they do it case by case. You raise another interesting point, because this board doesn't do things based on individual pieces of property. So if they decided to change direction philosophically, then they would be making that available as a possibility for other private condo developments also. But again, it's up to them to decide.
So is it legal then to have a philosophy that's not the law?
No, it is consistent with law. And remember that we're not obligated to do any special assessment, regardless of the type of ownership.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any more public comment? Mr. Ert, good evening, my friend.
Eder, 7212 Border Road. I see on your agenda you have an agreement for fire services for the city of Grand Blanc. I read a discussion letter on the city's website. It's called a discussion, you can't respond to it. But anyhow, after reading that letter, and maybe some of you have read it, why would we want to enter into a contract with the city after reading that letter. They sure don't seem to think too much of us, but we're taking care of them. I also see that's an agreement to provide fire services. The city back on the same website, their website, back on April 10th, passed a resolution to create their own fire department. In that letter on their website says, the current contract with Blanc Township is set to expire July the 24th, after a 90-day extension from April 25th. The current contract with a 90-day extension. I hope the city is not confused that they're getting an extension of a contract. They're entering into a new agreement, the way I understand what the township is doing. So they're misleading their city residents by just clouding things up. Thank you.
Mr. There was a lot of things in that piece of literature that you alluded to on the city's website that's full of, falsehoods, misinformation, and downright deceptive language. And thank you for reading that and bringing it to our attention. I really appreciate it, sir.
Thank you.
Is there any more public comment? Okay, excuse me, guys. See, folks don't have to sit through the meeting. We can do this real quick. I apologize, board. So if you have any questions, so it's going to be, we have an executive meeting after this, so it's going to be pretty late. But I'll be here. Yes. Trade you? Trade you? No. Trade you? No. The mass exodus. Continuing with the meeting, you're welcome.
Thank you.
I promise we will get down to the bottom of this. Continuing with our meeting, we are going to go through future planning. Do we have any subcommittee reports that anybody wants to bring out?
So,
Street roads?
Chairman Thomas. So, along the lines of the, I think we're.
I'm sorry?
I think this was under the attractiveness.
Item number 4, you skipped over item number.
Privilege.
Oh, the privilege presentation, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, I am so sorry. We have a fun event. We have a privileged presentation from Terra Environmental.
That's correct. So I'm Rick Rubio from Terra.
Welcome, Rick, and thank you for coming here this evening.
I appreciate it.
We should have done this before the Exodus.
That's fine. It's really for the township and Mr. Limita, if I said it right.
Yeah.
So Terra has taken the decision. I guess they decided to pick one community, and Grand Blanc Township is the community to be receive a Going Green Award.
Would you please pull your microphone up?
Sure.
Thank you.
Out of 60, I think there's almost 60, there's 62 communities in Michigan, and you have the highest participation rate at 71%, and the volume is, they average 657 pounds per year per household. So those are outstanding numbers for recycling. So, and right now recycling is a bad term. A lot of people don't like to talk about recycling because it costs more than it does to get rid of waste, but it's still, the environmental impact is huge, and we'd like to recognize Mr. Limita and the township for their outstanding achievement on that. So this is for you.
Thanks.
Congratulations. Channel 25 wants to take a picture of you. Yes.
There you go.
Somebody have their phone on their picture?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, that was very nice, and congratulations, Superintendent Lemata.
And our residents.
It's really
Yeah,
good.
They're the ones that
it is about the
recycle.
residents, we should have done it before. Okay. I think it's proper that we talk about streets and roads subcommittee now. Does anyone have a trustee answer?
So I just wanted to bring up a concept where, and we want to discuss this with Superintendent Lemata about potentially using PEG funds for some communications improvements to the township, kind of providing a more direct and more direct means of communicating what's going on with the township. So I think we'll have some discussion with you and with Supervisor Bennett when he gets back about what our options would be to potentially use those funds for that purpose.
Good.
Thank you.
Do you have Is there any other subcommittees? Okay, moving on to operational issues. The board will review the treasurer's fourth quarter report. Does anybody,
Yes, go ahead.
does anybody have any questions?
No.
Does this take any type of approval, Attorney Laddie?
It does. It does take approval.
Can I hear a motion to approve the treasurer's fourth quarter report?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Support.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Say anything.
Did you have discussion,
I-
Joe? I'm sorry.
I have-
Trustee Nance.
I have a comment that it raises a concern. And my concern is that we are in the second quarter, right, of 2019. And now you want to give a report of the fourth quarter of 2018.
Yeah, as I mentioned last time, it was going to be done last month, but I got sick, and that's why it didn't happen. And usually it does take a couple months because a lot of the information is taken from other analysts that I put in the part of this report, and that's why it takes longer to, it can't be done that quickly.
Are we going to do 2 quarters?
No, we'll catch up. We haven't finished the second quarter.
I guess now I'm ready. I guess my concern is if we have to approve this, so this question to you may not make sense. Why are we approving something that happened last year?
I don't think we ever approved it before. I
But-
think all they did was just say that they accepted it. I don't think they approved it. I can refer to Mr. Laddie, but
Well, I think it was, it was usually
just
it's
an
found in
acceptance,
the consent agenda, right?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
it's approved that way.
Yes, I understand that, but when you're dealing with the financial market, if something happened 5 or 6 months ago, that's so far behind, till you can't react currently to what's going on.
Right.
Does that make sense?
that makes sense, except I react every day, okay? When it changes, I react to it every day that I invest, okay? Even the board doesn't, their reports is behind, it's always been behind. And it wouldn't have been quite so far. It was dated in April, it was gonna be prior to that, but the only reason it was in April, the beginning of April, I think it was April 9th, was because I was ill.
Okay.
But we're going to catch up for the first quarter shortly, correct?
Yeah, I don't even have the first quarter documents yet from finance, so.
Okay. So we're waiting on the finance department?
I don't know, I'll have to check and see, because I know we're in, I don't think I do have it yet, no, but I'll have to verify.
Okay. Well, going back to reviewing of the fourth quarter report, is there any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same. Hearing none, motion passes. The board will consider a motion to authorize supervisor to execute the agreement for provision of fire service to the city of Grand Blanc for 90 days effective April 26th, 19th through July 24th, 2019. Can I?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
So moved by Clerk Lane, supported by Trustee Massey. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The board will consider a resolution to approve an amendment to the 2019 general fund budget to reflect the changes to the fire service operations moving from the Joint Fire Commission to a township department. Is there a motion?
So move.
Support.
Motion made by Trustee Massey, supported by Trustee Atkins. Is there any discussion?
Just, Mr. Chairman, it'll be a resolution. So
Yes, it'll be a roll call. Is there any more discussion?
So, just for the boards, all of what we're doing here is this has to do with the new fire services agreement. And so what we're accomplishing with these budget amendments are transferring those funds. You've got this one, and then you got the special revenue funds to deal with the capital equipment fund. As you know, the 2019, we have 1.5 mils being added or allocated to fire services, 1 mil of millage, extra voted millage, plus the half mil contribution from the general fund. So that money had already started to go to the fire commission, and what this is doing is now allocating that back into our budget, where we're going to have to create its own department as the Grand Blanc Township Fire Department. All we're doing now is taking the funds, the actual revenue, and we're making those adjustments from 115 days need to be allocated to operations of the fire commission. The remaining is going to come back into our revenue as well as expenses. We haven't done a breakdown as far as line item breakdown yet. This is in fact, Chief Burdett has been working on doing the closeout and budget amendments for the fire commission. And that's what we're accomplishing with these two things. We're also, because we had set aside, or he had asked for $468,000 to purchase that fire vehicle in the capital projects fund, the next budget resolution that you do also deals with the special revenue funds, where we're going to allocate that $468,000 back then from the general fund into the capital projects fund, so it's available to order that truck later this year.
Thank you for further explaining this, Superintendent Lehman. It's a voice vote. Clerk Lane?
No, it is not. It's a roll call.
Roll call. Clerk
So
Lane?
I have one more question, if I may. So we obviously have the 1 mil voted millage clear, that's in there. But had we dedicated a full half mil or reserved that to go to the commission so that it has to be taken, that much has to be taken back, or was that a bit of a?
That would come out of our general fund.
Well,
we did in the current budget, to answer your question, Trustee Mansour, is we had, just like we have been doing the transfer to the fire authority on the millage was $1,280,620. We'd also allocated our contribution in the form of $520,100 as just a general contribution, and then we have since 2010 separated out that $120,210 that was really designed for capital purchases. And so those were all allocated in the 2019 budget for the township to be transferred to the fire commission, and that's what we're affecting here.
Thank you.
So the whole $1.5 million is going in this.
Correct.
For this budgeted year, for
Correct.
2019.
Yeah, just in point of clarification, because I know that came up in some of the things that the city put out, that the township hadn't allocated the full 1.5 mils. The budget that you guys passed in December clearly allocated the full 1.5 mils towards the fire commission's budget for 2019.
And for clarification, the $500,000 that we're discussing is it's a moving target. It's at 0 to $500,000. So when the city put out that statement saying that we're overfunding the fire department, it's impossible to overfund it. it would be impossible for us to overfund it because we have the mechanism of 0 to half a mil out of our general fund. So that's absolutely not true. Okay, is there any more discussion on this resolution? Clerk Lane?
Mr. Mansour?
Yes.
Mr. Atkins?
Yes.
Mr. Guzak?
Yes.
Mr. Massey?
Yes.
Myself? Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution was approved.
The board will consider a resolution to approve an amendment to the 2019 Special Revenue Fund budget to reflect the changes to the fire service operations, moving from the Joint Fire Commission to a township department. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make the motion. Second.
Trustee Massey with the second. Is there any discussion on this resolution? This is pretty cut and dry. Clerk Lane?
Mr. Mansour?
Yes.
Mr. Atkins?
Yes.
Mr. Guzak?
Yes.
Mr. Massey?
Yes.
Myself? Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Thank you.
The board will consider a motion to authorize the superintendent to prepare RFPs and engage Rowe Engineering for youth ball fields upgrades at Bicentennial Parks. The Parks and Recreation Commission has received $70,000 in grants toward the total anticipated cost of $160,000, and this request is to use the township parks and recreation millage funds for the remaining $90,000.
So move.
Second.
Is there any discussion on this?
I think, Mr. Chair, that this is an excellent program, and as always, I appreciate everything Parks and Recs do for the children and the adults in our community.
I have a question. Has this gone through our mapping? Obviously, this has gone through our new mapping procedure. And what step are we on? Superintendent Lima, what step are we on with our new mapping? Well, this would be...
I don't have it in front of me, but the way that the board approved the process to work is that it gets generated from the township. We've been in discussions with Parks and Recreation on improving those ball fields. You saw interim director Jamie Weasel's notes in there, and I think a couple things to highlight. One is that Clinton Genesee Convention and Visitors Bureau estimates that $400,000 is spent in Grand Blanc and the surrounding areas every time we do a tournament, which I think is just phenomenal. And the outreach is even beyond then. But I think the way you guys have the process set up now is that it's really generated from us. We come and we say, are you guys prepared to agree with this capital projects plan? Now, these guys have been working on it for quite some time, and Jamie can certainly tell the board the success they had in getting a grant for $20,000 and a grant for $50,000, which will really help offset the cost of what we're going to need to spend out there.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would say. And this is a great project in that we're using the fact that we have a millage and we have millage money to attract more money to make a great project more profitable and beneficial. So we're taking essentially it's a little more like a 60-40 split, but we're going to maximize more of the millage money to use towards other projects or other things that we need, because there is an investment by the county and by the Greater Flint Community Foundation in this project. So it's something that's going to have a great benefit for our local teams. It's going to help those tournaments that we can attract. And I did make a note in there too about competition. These tournaments have other people vying for them. They want to bring them to Canton. They want to bring them to Brighton. But they like Grand Blanc. We've got a great location with our 69, 23, 75 intersection. We've got enough hotel rooms right now. We're just added a new hotel on Holly Road. So this Grand Blanc is an attractive place for tournaments and events. And we want to make sure we do our best to make sure that these people who want to come visit here and spend money in our community keep coming back.
You know, with us being, I'd like to start calling us Grand Blanc Baseball City, and I'd like to commend yourself and Carol for doing an outstanding job in getting this and not letting it fall to the wayside. And, you know, great job, Parks and Rec Commission. Really appreciate the
We appreciate
support.
that.
You guys are doing a great job with some really trying times and financial difficulties, and I commend you for keeping the battle afloat. Good job.
Thank you very much.
Is there any more discussion on this?
No.
Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
Director Weasel.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I pulled up the final of the Parks and Recreation value stream mapping process. And so the project approval in that section, it's generated from the township through me, comes to you guys for that project approval. You've given us the approval to move forward, so we will start that process. We'll go out, we'll generate quotes, and then those quotes will come back to the board for consideration of award so that we can move forward with the project.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Limita, and thank you, Trustee Atkins and Trustee Guzak for putting that mapping together. It's a great tool, and I'm glad to see that we're actually using it to the benefit of our residents. Item F, I'd like to have Clerk Lane read this for us.
Well, we have an election on May 7th, so this room and several others in the township will not be available. We can either have the option of canceling the committee of the whole meeting if Mr. Limita feels that the agenda for the 9th can be handled without a committee of the whole, or we have changed our Tuesday night meeting to a Wednesday night meeting. So it's totally up to the board and Mr. Limita.
So can we see that in a motion form, and then maybe we can change some things in the discussion? Maybe make a motion that we move the meeting from May 7th to May 6th?
No, you can't move it to the day before. It would have to be the day after. We set up on Monday night for the election.
Okay, I got you.
Tuesday's the election, so if you're going to
So,
reschedule it, it would be Wednesday. But if you don't need it, then you can save yourself one evening, and
I'd like
it's up
to,
to Mr. Limita, in my opinion.
well, let's get a motion first, then I can move it to discussion.
So moved. I don't,
Is there any discussion on it? Superintendent Limita?
Was the motion to move it to Wednesday?
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Until we have an idea, we're gonna cancel it or reschedule it.
So here's the feedback that I would provide you. It's probably the safest if you want to move it to the day preceding the May 8th, preceding the May 9th meeting. That way, right now, the agenda does not appear to be a very busy agenda, so maybe you can avoid having a committee of the whole meeting. However, that having been said, a lot of things could come up between now and when we push that agenda out in 2 weeks. So right now, you're scheduled for the policy review. We talked about putting all the policies together and bringing that in. And that was really just going to be handed out to the board members and then bring it back in about 30 days after you've had ample time to review everything and make sure that your comfort level is there. But if we want to have that conversation a little bit more in depth, then that meeting would come in handy. Best bet is schedule it, and then you can always cancel later.
Great. Yeah, that was my thoughts exactly. I mean, schedule it, and if it gets too busy, or there isn't enough activity, you could always cancel, because it's harder to set it up than it is to cancel.
So the motion would be moved to cancel the meeting on May 7th and move it to May 8th. Do we have to put this in the newspaper?
I have to post it.
I think Clerk Lane, if she posts it, I don't think it has to be published.
Yeah, it's good.
You've heard the motion, you've heard the second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, let's have a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to future agenda items, Superintendent Limita. No? Anybody else?
I actually have one for you. The DDA will be forwarding its annual budget, its proposed annual budget to you that they adopted at their last meeting for consideration on your May meeting schedule. It's very brief and very concise, and it should not be the item that causes your committee of the whole meeting on Wednesday night. But it is something that they would like to have handled at that meeting if possible.
Thank you, Attorney Leddy. At this time, how do we go into executive session?
Well, I want to make available to you the chance to go into executive session to discuss a written attorney opinion that I sent to you. And if you feel that you'd like to spend some time talking about that opinion or have questions, then that would be the basis for your, for a closed session.
There's also one other item. That is, we're going to begin negotiations with the part-time firefighters union in May. Their contract expires June 30th, and I would like to just have a preliminary discussion about that in executive session as well before we start negotiations.
This evening? So I need a motion to close this meeting and to open executive session.
I think, well, and again, Clerk Lane, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I think you're able to move into executive session in the body of this meeting, if you want, by 2/3 roll call vote. And then, so when you come back in, you'll just be.
So I need to hear a resolution then?
No.
Is a
Just the motion to go into closed session to consider written attorney opinion and to discuss upcoming contract negotiations.
So moved. So moved.
Support. Mr. Mansour, Trustee Mansour made the motion. Treasurer Guzak had the support. It's a roll voice. Clerk Lane?
Roll call. Mr. Mansour?
Yes.
Mr. Adkins?
Yes.
Mr. Guzak?
Yes.
Mr. Massey? Myself, yes. Mr. Thomas?
No. Yes.
Don't do
Let's take a